The 1980s were meant to be Roy Orbison's triumphant return. He had new material, powerful industry connections, and that same haunting, unforgettable voice. But something strange happened. DJs who played his songs were fired, and record stores that dared to stock his albums were threatened. Why? Because Roy had crossed a line. He angered the most powerful gatekeeper in radio. And the cost was his career. This is the story they didn't want you to hear. Roy Orbison was born on April 23, 1936, in Vernon, Texas, in the middle of one of America's toughest eras. His father worked unpredictable oilfield jobs, and his mother, a lover of painting and poetry, held the family together despite constant financial stress. Life was unstable, and the family moved frequently, chasing work like many others during the Depression. In 1942, they moved to Fort Worth for wartime factory jobs. But by the late 40s, they settled in Wink, Texas, a dusty, isolated town that Roy later described as greasy and filled with everything he disliked. Yet, those hard early years built his resilience. He came from tough stock, a family of survivors, and that tenacity would echo through his music. Everything changed when he turned 6. That year, Roy's father gave him a guitar. It wasn't just a gift, it became his whole world. He learned to play from his father and older brother, and quickly, music consumed him. While other kids played games, Roy stayed inside, practicing. At age 7, he knew music was his future. Influenced by Hank Williams, Jimmy Rogers, and especially Lefty Frizzell, his slow, emotional style was already beginning to form. In 1944, a statewide polio scare swept through Texas, and Roy's parents, terrified, sent him and his brother to stay with their grandmother in Vernon. The separation made him quieter, more withdrawn, already struggled with self-esteem. His pale hair embarrassed him so much he dyed it black as a kid. And sports didn't interest him, but one thing set him apart: his voice. He didn't think it was great, just memorable. That humility would define him. A big turning point came in 1946, when a traveling medicine show passed through town. Just 10 years old, Roy entered a local talent contest and performed Mountain Dew and Joel Blon. To his surprise, he tied for first place with a teenager. That moment changed him. He realized strangers liked his voice, too. Suddenly, music wasn't just a personal escape. It was his way to connect. Age 15, Roy was performing on curbside radio in Kermit, Texas, and had formed his first band, the Wink Westerners. They played everything from country to big band hits, and even landed their own radio show. Despite working brutal summer jobs painting water towers and cutting steel, music stayed his obsession. In 1955, Roy left college and started over. He disbanded the Wink Westerners and created a new group, the Teen Kings. The Teen Kings quickly gained traction, landing a TV slot in Odessa and winning over local fans. During this time, Roy met Claudette Frady, who would later become his wife. That same year, the band recorded their first single, Ooby Dooby, in a modest New Mexico studio. The record came out on a small label, but quickly drew attention. The origin of their big break is still debated. Some say Johnny Cash told Roy to call Sun Records, while others, including Roy's drummer and Sun founder Sam Phillips, insist a record store owner played the track for Phillips over the phone. Regardless of how it happened, Sun Records signed the Teen Kings and re-recorded Ooby Dooby in Memphis. The song became a hit, but things weren't smooth behind the scenes. Roy wanted to sing dramatic, heartfelt ballads, but Sun wanted rockabilly, the Elvis formula. Roy didn't fit the image. Sam Phillips had eyes on Carl Perkins, not Roy. Still, when Perkins was sidelined by a car accident, Ooby Dooby got its shot, reaching the Billboard charts and selling over 200,000 copies. Unfortunately, it ended there. The band had no follow-up success, and in desperation, they performed on the roofs of drive-in theaters between movies. Roy gave it his all, dancing like Elvis and pleading for cheers. "We did everything we could to get applause," he later recalled. "We had only one hit record. It was a time of grit, hustle, and hard-learned lessons. Then came 1960, and everything changed. Roy released Only the Lonely, a song he had first offered to Elvis and the Everly Brothers. Both turned it down. That rejection became a blessing. When Roy recorded it himself, the world heard something different. The song flipped the formula. Backup vocals led the track, instruments faded to the background, and Roy's voice soared, fragile, powerful, and aching. It was revolutionary. A time when male singers were expected to sound tough and cool, Roy broke the mold. Didn't fake confidence. He leaned into vulnerability, and suddenly, heartbreak was beautiful. From then on, Roy stopped playing by the rules. Nearly all his biggest hits were self-written or co-written, first with Joe Melson and later with Bill Dees. Together, they abandoned standard song structures. Where most songs followed verse, chorus, verse, Roy's hits like In Dreams and Crying flowed unpredictably. It worked. They worked because they were real. Roy didn't write for radio. He wrote for emotion. That's why his music endured. That emotional gap turned into a chasm. In 1964, Claudette and Roy divorced. It was a painful split, but like so much in Roy's life, it wasn't the end of the story. Just another verse in a song full of sorrow and resilience. They remarried in 1965, trying to rebuild what fame and distance had broken. But the foundation was cracked. While Roy tried to juggle a grueling MGM recording schedule with family life, the hits stopped coming. The public was moving on, swept up in psychedelic rock and harder-edged sounds. Roy, the gentle balladeer in black, was being drowned out. Then came tragedy. In 1966, Roy and Claudette went for a motorcycle ride in Tennessee. He was on the back of his bike when a pickup truck pulled in front of them. Claudette was thrown from the bike and killed instantly. Roy was shattered, but fate wasn't done with him yet. 2 years later, while on tour in England, Roy got a phone call no parent should ever receive. Fire had broken out at his Hendersonville home. His two eldest sons, Roy Jr. and Anthony, were trapped inside, died in the fire. Only his youngest son, Wesley, survived, saved by Roy's parents, who happened to be watching him that day. 3 major blows. In just 2 years, most people would have disappeared forever. Roy nearly did. He withdrew from public life, poured himself into work, and focused on raising his surviving son. The music world largely left him behind. In the 1970s, his records barely charted. MGM eventually dropped him. His once iconic voice, still powerful, was now being ignored, and here's where the conspiracy begins. Roy Orbison was staging a comeback in the 1980s. He had a new album. He was working with artists like Bruce Springsteen, Bono, and Elvis Costello. He was even part of the supergroup Traveling Wilburys with George Harrison, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, and Jeff Lynne. Momentum was real. Then, stations refused to play his songs. DJs who did were fired. Independent record stores received threats for selling his albums. Why? Because Roy had challenged the power structure. At the heart of radio in the 80s was one man, Lee Abrams, the architect of the album-oriented rock format and a consultant for dozens of major stations. Abrams allegedly believed Orbison's style was dated and didn't fit the tight playlists and rigid formats that now controlled rock radio. Roy's team tried to push new singles. They were stonewalled. Labels were told, "Don't bother." Stations were told, "He's not relevant." Some insiders believe it went even deeper, that Orbison's loyalty to small labels and creative control put him on the blacklist. Others think his success with the Traveling Wilburys threatened egos in the industry. Whatever the reason, Orbison was effectively silenced. Again, fans never stopped loving him. His comeback album, Mystery Girl, was already finished when he died of a heart attack in 1988. He was only 52. The album was released posthumously. It went platinum. The world finally remembered. His voice, his pain, illness, all of it came roaring back. Even in death, Roy Orbison proved what he always knew. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to tell the truth. But then, almost like a twist in one of his own ballads, the world came calling again. 1980s saw a wave of nostalgia for early rock pioneers. But Roy's return wasn't just about looking back. It was a rebirth. David Lynch changed everything when he used In Dreams in a pivotal scene in Blue Velvet, a haunting moment that reintroduced Roy's voice to a whole new generation. Suddenly, artists like Bruce Springsteen, Bono, and K.D. Lang were singing his praises. Dylan called him one of the greatest. Elvis Costello said Roy's voice sounded like it came from another planet. But it wasn't just the legends who loved him. Fans were listening again, and this time, the music industry couldn't ignore it. In 1987, Roy was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Bruce Springsteen gave the speech, saying, "I wanted to sing like Roy Orbison, but I couldn't. Nobody can." Joined the Traveling Wilburys soon after. The group was a supernova of talent. George Harrison, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, and Roy Orbison. They called him Lefty Wilbury, a nod to his quiet, cool, and classic style. Their chemistry was real. The music was timeless. Roy's comeback album, Mystery Girl, was already in the works. Produced by Jeff Lynne, it featured collaborations with Tom Petty and Bono. The centerpiece? You got it! A joyful, soaring return to form. But before the album could be released, tragedy struck again. On December 6, 1988, Roy Orbison collapsed in his mother's house in Tennessee after spending the day flying model airplanes with his sons. He was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. A heart attack took him at just 52 years old. The world mourned, but it also celebrated. Mystery Girl was released posthumously in 1989. You Got It shot up the charts. Roy Orbison, the man whose voice once brought the Beatles to a standstill, was back at the top. He died at the peak of his second act. His legacy sealed. His life had been filled with tragedy. Love lost, children buried, and dreams broken. Through it all, Roy never lost the thing that made him different: vulnerability. In an industry built on flash, he wore his pain like armor. He didn't pose. He felt. He sang, the world stopped to listen. Stillness, sunglasses, black clothes. It wasn't a gimmick. It was survival. And that voice? It still echoes somewhere between heartbreak and heaven. Then, something unexpected happened. David Lynch, renowned for his surreal and unsettling films, used Roy Orbison's haunting ballad in Blue Velvet. It was a moment that shocked audiences. The song, once associated with romance and innocence, now played during one of the most disturbing scenes in movie history. Dennis Hopper's character, a violent madman, became obsessed with it. Initially, Orbison was furious. No one had asked for his permission, and seeing his music tied to something so dark felt like a betrayal. But as time went on, something changed. Films sparked a fascination among a new generation, and suddenly, people began asking about the man behind that iconic voice. Orbison watched the movie again, and over time, he had a change of heart. "Okay, I get it," he said. He even agreed to re-record the song with Lynch's help, and just like that, his voice was back in the spotlight, brighter than ever. A year later, in 1987, Orbison took the stage at the Coconut Grove nightclub in Los Angeles. This wasn't just any performance. The audience was filled with Hollywood legends: David Lynch, Patrick Swayze, Chris Christopherson. Everyone came to pay tribute. Orbison, deeply touched, stood in awe of the respect he was receiving. The very next morning, an earthquake hit L.A., rattling chandeliers and knocking them down. Yet, remarkably, the master tapes of Orbison's performance survived. That night was later immortalized in Black and White Night, a recording that captured pure magic. Years later, unreleased footage revealed something even more special. A secret encore Orbison and his band played after the crowd had left. It was as if the night itself refused to end. It was the pinnacle of Orbison's comeback. But something even more unexpected was waiting just around the corner. In 1988, George Harrison needed a B-side for a single. What started as a casual jam session in Bob Dylan's garage turned into something much bigger. Harrison, Dylan, Jeff Lynne, Tom Petty, and Roy Orbison came together. They had no plans, but their chemistry was undeniable. What emerged was handled with care. and it was too good to just leave as a B-side. So they made an album. Orbison, always humble, took the name Lefty Wilbury, a nod to his musical hero Lefty Frizzle. Group, later dubbed the Traveling Wilburys, was more than just a band, a supergroup of rock legends who happened to cross paths at the perfect moment. Their album was a hit, and Orbison, now back in the modern rock conversation, signed with Virgin Records to record new material. With the help of his friends, Tom Petty, Bono, and even Elvis Costello, Orbison created Mystery Girl, his final masterpiece. The recording sessions were infused with energy and emotion. One night, while recording A Love So Beautiful at George Harrison's estate, Orbison's voice filled the room, echoing through the halls like a dream. Everyone knew they were witnessing something rare. But fate had one more cruel twist in store. On December 6, 1988, just weeks after completing Mystery Girl, and shortly after the Wilburys album release, Orbison collapsed at his mother's home. He was rushed to the hospital, but he never made it. He was only 52. The world was stunned. Roy had just reclaimed everything: his voice, his audience, his place in the musical legacy. And even in death, he continued to surprise the world. A month after his passing, on January 3, 1989, You Got It was released as a single, rocketed up the charts, becoming his first top 10 hit in nearly 25 years. The only known live performance of the song was recorded in Belgium, just 17 days before his death. That footage became the official music video, haunting, beautiful, and final. When Mystery Girl hit stores in January 1989, it was met with critical and commercial acclaim. The album went platinum, with songs like She's a Mystery to Me earning universal praise. Bono had even written the title track specifically for Orbison. Roy Orbison's voice, still untouched by time, stood as a testament to his enduring power. Emotional, unforgettable, and incredibly unique, his legacy was now sealed, and the world had truly come to understand the genius of Roy Orbison. Reviewers hailed it as his best work in decades. In 2014, to mark the 25th anniversary of Mystery Girl, Orbison's sons revisited an old vocal demo, adding their own music to create a track called The Way Is Love. Even years after his death, his voice still had the power to bring people to tears. Roy Orbison didn't just make a comeback. He staged one of the greatest returns in music history. And, true to the nature of his music, sad, sweet, and timeless, he left at the peak of his rebirth, frozen in a perfect, haunting final note.